I recently watched the movie Final Fantasy Advent Children with my little sister for the second time, years after the first time we did. We both understand more about the context and plot of Final Fantasy VII, the game that this movie is a sequel to, so it seemed like we would have less questions than before. However, I almost feel like I have more questions. So let's dive in and take a look at the different aspects of this movie and talk about what's good and what's confusing. This might have spoilers for both the movie and the games in the Final Fantasy VII series, so you have been warned, but it really depends on what you consider spoilers, so just tread with caution. Okay, quick plot rundown. It's 2 years after Final Fantasy VII. There's this disease going around called the geostigma. Cloud and Tifa took in this orphan that had it, and Cloud has it too, but he ran away because he has no cure and he didn't want to deal with dying near those he loves. But then these remnants of our dead villain Sephiroth appear, trying to take Genova's head back from Shinra so they could destroy the planet. So not only did they have to deal with the plague, but with 3 bratty boys who want to kill everyone. The plot is fairly understandable if you understand the world of the games, but there are some problems with it. And the main thing is, the movie doesn't want to explain anything.
Kadash. What is he? I'd rather not know.
It glosses over the most glaring questions with people saying, "Who knows?" which is a bit lazy, and I'll get to some of these big questions soon. Despite the confusing intricacies of how, at least the whys are pretty straightforward. We can understand each character's motivation easily. Denzel wants to be cured and have a family, Cloud wants to protect the people he loves and be forgiven, the Turks want to help their boss, and Rufus wants to get the blame off of himself. So maybe we don't really need to worry about what is going on, because that's not really what it's about for the heroes. It's more about personal things. Cloud isn't even questioning this.
I was just thinking that.
One problem with the villains is that they aren't that scary. One reason being that they can be awfully cringe at times.
Tell me what you cherish most. Give me the pleasure of taking it away.
It's not quite fully explained how they even exist or how Rufus knows all that he does about them, including their names. There are a lot of questionable things, actually. Let's see, the remnants seem to have their clothes magically formed. Were their weapons and motorcycles made this way too? Why can they create monsters? Why does reuniting one remnant with Jenova create Sephiroth instead of all 3 remnants? Sephiroth should just be a pair of legs or something. So yeah, they're maybe not the best villains, but their insanity can be a bit entertaining anyway, and they make for some crazy fight scenes. But we all know no one is watching for the villains. If you loved the main characters before, you'll probably still love them now. Cloud and Tifa might be a bit more dismal at times, but it's all a product of what's going on around them, so it makes sense for their characters to change a bit. Some of the friends seem pretty forced in at the end just to be in the movie, but I don't care because they're so fun and lovable that it doesn't matter if they're only in there for a few minutes.
Where can I buy a phone?
It doesn't distract from anything else in the movie, and it does help show Cloud that people care about him. Comic relief characters like Reno and Rude were completely fine because that wasn't all they were. They were mostly competent, and they were dedicated, but still able to think for themselves and weren't overly cringy. But their suits are 2 sizes too big. What's a good movie without some shipping? There are 2 main kinds of Final Fantasy VII fans, those who ship Cloud with Tifa and those who ship him with Aerith. Well, the Clo-T shippers got to win with this movie, not just because Aerith is kicking it in heaven with her dead boyfriend and not letting Cloud join the party, but because Tifa gets some nice moments with him. When you pass out with your babe. And I wonder what she means exactly in this scene.
Which is it? A memory or us?
The only reason she should know Cloud ran away was that he couldn't cure his geostigma, not that he wanted forgiveness from Aerith. If she did know that, she could be saying, "Are you going to feel guilty forever, or step up and take care of this makeshift family we have here?" Or is it more like, "Are you going to be in love with a dead memory when I've been trying to be your boo for years?" I have no idea. But anyway, you can really feel how much these 2 care about each other, even if they might have a hard time showing it to each other's faces. Except there's this weird little air kiss at the end. What exactly is this? I don't understand flirting. Anyway, let's go back to what I said about Cloud wanting Aerith's forgiveness, because he believes he let her die in the events of Final Fantasy VII. He feels so wrong and broken that he distances himself from the people he wants to be with so he doesn't let them down. And in that one moment where you see everyone who reached out and cared, that's super touching. Knowing that he left because he loves them and not because he doesn't, that his friends still talk to him all the time even though he never responds. It's almost enough to make an Emma cry. And just all the little details of the connections between the characters. The drawings on the wall that Marlene or Denzel made of Cloud and Tifa, which really just shows how attached they are to each other. And of course, the emotional mania of the Remnants, most of all Kadaj. He really seems crazily obsessed with being the perfect son of Jenova, and it comes through perfectly. Speaking of Kadaj's emotions, my sister highly praised how this was shown in his voice. Now, I've seen some complaints about the voice acting in the English dub of this movie.
And he sounded kind of strange.
Strange enough that they changed his voice actor. But to be honest, there isn't much of a problem with it. In fact, some of it is really good, like at Kadaj. And this will always be Reno's voice to me, no offense to the remake. I did feel like Tifa's voice sometimes lacked the proper emotion that would help give her words a little more impact, but it wasn't really bad by any means. Weird pauses in dialogue can be blamed on the writers who had to work around dubbing over the Japanese, and they aren't constantly happening, so it's not that distracting. I liked all of the characters' voices, even if some renditions of these characters might be considered better. They all suit the tone of the movie well. This is an action movie, so it's not really fair for me to complain that some of the fight scenes were too long, but they were. Still, they were very epic and fantastical, which is great. Even though the fantasy and physics-defined moments were entertaining, I think the simpler moments were the best. The fight between Tifa and Laz is one example that flows really well. It's crazy body-slamming into church pews action, but easy to keep track of. In the highway motorbike fight, not so much. I like that they weren't afraid to get gritty with the blood and stabbing, though. Just like in the games, the occasional swear word, slightly cheesy humor, we have to applaud the movie for staying true to the original tones of the games. The animation is superb. It never looked weird once, besides how this tree trunk weirdly shattered. There aren't many movies animated in the realistic but slightly stylized look that Final Fantasy has, so it stands out in a good way. I like the use of toning down the colors a bit from the vibrant color themes sometimes used in the games because it helps things look dismal for the geostigma-filled setting and mature emotional drama. One thing with the colors, though, why are Tifa's eyes red in the games but brown in the movie? Anyway, the detail in the cloth texture was superb, which makes up for how weirdly flat the road textures looked up close. But you even got to see veins in some people's hands, so really nice animation and detail in this movie. Feel free to drool over it. Just some quick questions that weren't answered in the movie, because, like I said, it doesn't explain that much. Did Rufus die at the end? It never showed his face. How is Cloud fine after being shot? Did Aerith's water heal him? Why? Because it only seems like it gets rid of Jenova-related things. Why did the Remnants want an army of children instead of convincing adults they could be cured, which would be more powerful for their pawns? Why did they randomly think Jenova was in the monument? Only because Shinra made it? That's not a really good reason. They said that Elena and Sung were tortured by the Remnants, but they never mentioned where this was or how they escaped. I know it's not that important, but it's very glossed over. And why was Elena vlogging when they went searching for Jenova? How did all the friends know to come help defeat the monster? It feels like Vincent made them come, but he says he has no phone, so how did he contact them? When exactly did Cloud leave? Maybe I missed this part in the movie, but I just don't know if this was more like 2 years ago or 2 months ago. And why did Kadaj cry when the box holding Genova's head broke? Because clearly she was fine because they were still able to use it. Why did Reno and Rude act like they were sacrificing themselves when trying to blow up Yazoo and Laz when they were totally fine after? And why did Rufus have the Turks attack Cloud if he wanted him on their side? Okay, enough of that. There are things more powerful in the movie than any unanswered question. Here it is. I think the main theme of this movie is family, and we're shown 3 different kinds of family to consider. The first is Jenova's family. The Revenants and Sephiroth are all extremely devoted to their mother, to the point of almost insanity. And even though they're so adoring towards Jenova, this blood-related family isn't very functional. They seem jealous of whoever gets the most love from Jenova, but Jenova probably doesn't even love them. Even if they're like a real family, it doesn't function well. The Shinra folks are another kind of family. The Turks are extremely dedicated to Rufus, just like the Remnants are to Jenova, but it's different. Because Rufus seems to care about them too. They all care about each other. There isn't this jealousy that exists among the Remnants. They've all worked with each other for years, so they have a natural familial bond and devotion to each other. And then, of course, most important of all, is the family that Cloud has made.
I guess that only works for real families.
Tifa.
Is that a proposal? two childhood friends that have been through everything together, an orphan they took in, and their other friend's daughter who they're looking after. They are all extremely attached to each other, always there for each other, and part of it seems like it's because they have no one else. Marlene's dad is off doing other things, Denzel's parents are dead, Cloud and Tifa's friends all left except for each other. This family is all of their motivation, and it really shows with each of the four characters. I think one other prevalent theme in the movie is shown through these wolves that appear at different times. I'm sure they do have some specified symbolism that I could look up, but I'd like to figure it out for myself. I wonder if they represent Cloud's loneliness, like a lone wolf. Or maybe they represent some connection to the past, as one appears near Zack's sword. Maybe there's some sort of guardian angel to Cloud. I'm not sure, but it's an interesting thing to wonder about as you watch the film, so keep an eye out for it. Although Marlene has a monologue at the beginning explaining the whole story leading up to the events of the movie, I'm warning you that it will be pretty hard to follow if you don't know at least the basics of Final Fantasy VII first. One other thing I personally feel, and no one else might, is that the character of Denzel wasn't particularly compelling. I think some flashbacks of Cloud spending more time with Denzel, or anything that would make us more attached to him besides, he's a sick orphan, you have to feel sorry for him, would have made his sections of the story just a little more gripping. But overall, I really enjoyed this movie. Even if it was confusing at times, I think the emotional themes driving it were really strong and powerful. And it's just fun to see characters come back and goof around with each other again, to see how things have changed in 2 years. It holds up extremely well 15 years after it was made, and I think it's honestly timeless. 15 years later, it will look just as good. So, bravo, Final Fantasy Advent children, you are a beauty. A sometimes strange beauty, and maybe not the best, but still a beauty. I still have questions, though.
This is what happens to your brain after snorting.
Genova juice!